Welcome. This is Tracy Z.
This is Fred Rui.
And we are here for Note Investing 101. And we're talking about how to start a thriving note business. And today we thought it'd be fun to walk through a day in the life of a note buyer. So if you've been joining us for these sessions, thank you. We've done several already, right? So if you've missed them, make sure you go back and watch the replays because we talked a little bit about marketing and the opportunities for profit. And today we want to talk about what you need to do, what a day in the life of a note investor looks like.
We're looking at, like you said, we did, we kind of covered marketing and we're crunching numbers. So we thought it would be really good to do just a day in a life. It would just be like, what is a typical day, from starting your business to, working with investors. What does a typical day look like, or what does a typical week look like? So we're going to start right out of the gate with setting up shop, which you don't have to do every day.
That's true.
But wait, before we do that, we have to put up a disclaimer.
That's right.
Yeah, we have to do a disclaimer because this is one of those things you have to do. So basically, we're not attorneys. We are not giving you legal advice. We are not giving you tax advice. We're not pretending to be doctors on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever else we are. You need to contact your own people.
Exactly. And if you want to recatch any of these, we also want to mention it's noteinvestor.com/101. So noteinvestor.com/101 to receive notices when we go live and to watch any of the replays and other things we talk about here today. So let's start with setting up shop. I mean, that's kind of an obvious place. This is one that you normally do once, you don't do all the time. So if you were just starting out in note investing, this would be where you would start.
So there are a couple things I think that you want to pay attention to. One is the most popular question is, do you have to set up an entire company for it? When I started a long time ago, I did not. I created a DBA. So at a very minimum, I think you want some sort of entity. Yes, it can be you, and yes, you can be private. But if you're talking about running it as a business, I think it's good to have some sort of company name. Now, whether you want a DBA, an S Corp, a C Corp, or whatever, that's really between you and your tax accountant and how you think you should set that up. But at the minimum, a DBA, which doesn't cost much at all.
Yeah, most people eventually will form some sort of entity like an LLC or an S Corp, or as Fred mentioned, a C Corp, most common being the LLC. Those people do that eventually because there's some tax benefits and there's some asset protection benefits. And definitely if you're buying and investing in notes. Now, if you're using your self-directed IRA, then you'll be taking a name in the custodian for the benefit of your IRA trust. So that is its own entity sort of in itself. The reason we talk about this is we don't want people to get slowed down. If you're referring notes, you could refer a note as a person, as Fred mentioned, doing business as, and it would just get reported to your income personally. So we just want to talk about, there's some different opportunities there, but don't let it hold you back. Once you have your entity that you want to do business in, then think about what you want to get for a business address. You don't need to have a brick and mortar business, but it is good to have a business address because you want to be able to put that on your website. You want to be able to receive mail, and most people don't want to use their own personal home. So it's very acceptable to use like a UPS store mailbox, or sometimes people use an executive suite. There's different opportunities there, but we do recommend getting some kind of address, even a PO box that's not your personal address.
And lastly, I think you need to have some sort of web presence. You need to have a website of some sort. It's important, and we talked about this in a previous episode, but when we're looking for people or want to find credibility, if nothing else, and yes, websites can get you deals. Yes, you can put forms on there where they can submit deals to you, but a website's only as strong as you marketing out there. However, if you're doing any kind of marketing, if you're trying to get referrals, and like we talked about last episode, or if you're trying to outbound to sellers, they're going to look for your website. They're going to turn to your website for information. And if there's no information on there, that's a problem. They're going to move on to somebody else. So basically, you need to have some sort of website. And we call it a brochure website. If you just want a basic website that shows who you are, what you do, how to get a hold of you, you can certainly do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Or you can add on a few bells and whistles. But at very minimum, setting up shop, you're a DBA or starting out just as yourself and flipping notes, you're going to have some sort of presence office-wise, which is nothing more than a laptop. You don't have to have office space, but as Tracy said, you're going to need some sort of address to send mail, typically not your own home. And third, you're going to need some sort of web presence.
And I think fourth, you're going to want some sort of phone number that you feel comfortable sharing. So if you want to get a dedicated cell phone number, some people use their cell phone number. We find either your own dedicated cell phone number, or you can use a service like ringcentral.com, which we've used now for 21
I love
years.
it, yeah.
And they have programs where they'll give you a business number, and then you can just have it ring through to your cell phone. Now, I saw we had a question pop up. Somebody asked, can I use an LLC that is not in the state I live? So when we get to that fine tune of a question, we're going to say to defer to your legal counsel what's best. But certainly there are people that have set up LLCs in different states than where they live. You just have to keep in mind what's best for operating there, and also for where you're going to buy the notes and transact the business. Yeah. Oh, and we got a nice compliment. Thank you. We love.
Thanks, Serena.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Hello, South Dakota. So not Serena, the Mark person.
Mark mentioned that, yes, there's some benefits to certain states. They make it easier and less expensive to file LLC. So definitely talk to somebody that's it's adept at that, because they are pretty reasonable now to set up. Mm-hmm. So those are the main things that you need to do setting up shop. And there's one more thing you should check, and that is where you're planning on doing business, if any laws specifically relate to how you're operating and doing business. So we want to make sure that if you're buying notes, collecting notes, brokering notes, just do a double check on how your state treats that as well. So those are the things that you need to do for setting up shop. And then you're ready to
let's talk about marketing. Let's talk about marketing. So in a typical day, you're going to be spend at least 70% of your business is really about marketing. It only takes so long to analyze a deal. It only takes so long to send a deal on to somebody to have it quoted, or for someone to close it for you. So you're going to spend a lot of time marketing. And as we talked about in the last episode, there's lots of different ways to market, and you're probably going to have more than one method. We recommend that you at least have two. That if you're doing direct mail and maybe you're going for referral, maybe you're doing online and you're also doing, network meetings, whatever it may be. But you're going to want to have two probably.
Yes, I definitely agree. Don't try to do them all at the start. Maybe you will add additional ones later. As Fred mentioned, if you start with two, maybe three that you're really focusing on, maybe reverse ad marketing as well. Remember, we did that whole session on marketing. We went through the different varieties of marketing, and that just, of course, tipped the iceberg, but those were the most common methods. So pick a couple, stick to them, get them up and operating, and then slowly add in others as you go.
Yeah, and how you pick which ones to do were based on budget. And we did talk about that. If you go back to the noteinvestor.com/101 and you sign up, you can get access to the previous one we did, which is on marketing, where we actually analyze them. And, like I said, budget also comes into play of how you're going to do your marketing. And then they also, like I said before, you always need to be marketing.
You absolutely do. And so once you get that set up and it's a marketing machine that's happening, you may not spend 70% of your time marketing, but you definitely will be. And we still spend a good part of our time marketing, because you're always looking for deal sources and inventory, unless you're going to the listing sites like we mentioned in that marketing before, if you're trying to shortcut all of those methodologies. Marketing is super important, and so you're always going to be marketing and wanting to do that.
Let's talk about gathering information.
Yeah, so you've marketed and somebody contacts you.
Somebody called you.
Yes, or emails you or submits the worksheet online. So this is where you've got to get some information to know what to do with the deal.
The worksheet's probably one of my favorite things, and it's evolved over the years, but it's not evolved much. And we have a picture of the worksheet to put up on the screen for you. And it's basically content about the deal. It's going to have the information of who you are if you're going to flip this on to somebody else. Otherwise, you're going to skip below that. But then you're just going to be talking about the property, what it looks like, what type of property it is. And then you're going to have historical information that's talking about the date of sale, the selling price, the down payment. And you remember when we talked on the previous episode, and we've talked about, working with sellers and things like that, you're going to fill out all that information. That's how, whether you're going to buy the deal, then you're going to want to know that information, obviously. And then, or if you're going to flip it onto a funder, then you absolutely need to have that information to find out how much a funder will pay for it.
And that information is very important, and you don't go down that worksheet like a robot. This is an opportunity to really get to know the party that's wanting to sell their note, because they have a reason that they're doing that. And this is your opportunity to build some rapport and really discuss the transaction. So don't ask the questions like it's some kind of interview process. They're really more conversational questions. And you're trying to get to the crux of the matter when you're dealing with what we call a mom and pop seller, somebody's seller finance and just done one or maybe two notes in their lifetime. You're trying to understand, what is their need? Are they wanting to solve a problem, or they're trying to pay a bill? Maybe they want to move on to another investment. Maybe they want to do something fun like take a vacation or buy a boat. So you're trying to understand what the need is, because that will help you understand how to better serve them, how to meet that need, and whether they need something like a full purchase, or maybe they just need a partial purchase. So when we went through profiting with notes and talked about the different opportunities, we looked at partials and fulls. And so this is the conversation where you'll see what option is going to best fit their needs.
Yeah, there are a lot of different ways to buy a note. I could look at any note and probably come up with 10 different ways to buy it, but I would never offer that to someone trying to sell a note and go, hey, here's all 10 options. It's like walking into Cheesecake Factory. I'm completely confused. I don't know what to order. There's no way you can be good at cooking all of this stuff. So I'm just going to have a hamburger. So one of the things you want to do is that you pick one or two ways to offer to buy the note. And you do that based on what their need is. And that's what the filling the worksheet is for me. And that's what I love about the worksheet. And Tracy knows this, is that I spent just as much time on the back of the worksheet as I did on the front of the worksheet. Now, if you've never seen the worksheet, there is not anything on the back. It's blank. And I would just write down little notes. They were going to Disneyland. They wanted to buy a boat. They've always wanted a boat. They were going to sail onto the Key West, whatever it may be. And I wrote down all those notes because they became important later when I went to make an offer and I found out what the need is. And you need to know, and we're not going to cover it in this one because there's a whole negotiation class we actually just did for our members. We just did a whole negotiation session on how to negotiate, how to present offers. But you do need to know the need. At least walk away with that at this point. And one of the ways to find that is when you're gathering information, you have a chance to build that rapport, and you also have a chance to find out what the need is and why they're selling.
So once you've gathered the basic information, then you are ready to start doing some deal analysis. So that's the next piece of what a day in the life of a note buyer looks like. And the deal analysis is really doing some preliminary homework on that transaction. So I like to the first thing I like to do is just pull up Google and type in the address and just get a picture. Now, I know that's not a current picture, but it gives me an idea for the property that is acting as security or collateral for the note. And it also gives me an idea what the neighborhood looks like around it. The second thing I like to do is hop over to the county tax records. Fortunately, almost all counties are online now. So you can type in the address and you can find out who the current owner is, when it last sold, how much taxes are those real estate taxes current? Because it's one of those things that you know if the buyer's in trouble if they're having troubles keeping their real estate taxes current.
I like to crunch the numbers, and
Absolutely.
All that takes is basically a calculator. And okay, there's several different versions of calculators, apparently. This one's the best one. But, you're just going to put the numbers in. We actually have a training where we actually went through all the numbers and showed you how to do it and stuff. But you want to get used to, or take a course or take some videos on a financial calculator. It'll make you much more comfortable on making offers. It's essential if you're going to buy notes and hold them for yourself. You need to know what you're buying. You need to know, if you say, hey, I want to earn a 12% yield on my money, on my investment, then you need to know how to operate one of these. And it's not that hard. And I've said it a million times. I don't like math, but I like money. And so we've made it real easy when we talk about how to work with calculators. A lot of people can out there on how to do it, but you definitely need to know the calculator.
The basic numbers we're looking at how much equity does the buyer have. That's called LTV, or loan to value. We're looking at what maximum investment we'd make, so investment to value compared to the property value. We want to see if the buyer's balance, so what they currently owe, the unpaid principal balance, we want to know if that matches up where it should be in the amortization schedule. Are they paying ahead, or maybe they've gotten behind? So those are the things that we're looking at first. And then we can say, well, based on the property type, the equity, the terms of the note, we can see what we might pay for a yield. So that's how we start doing our basic deal analysis. We also like to go online and do some basic comp analysis. Now, some people are in the real estate world, they might have access to the MLS. The rest of us just starting out, they were going to go and look things like Zillow and the other sites that we use frequently. My mind is doing a blank all of a sudden for some reason. But we go to Zillow, we do the Redfin. We've got a couple of different sites that we use for that as well, even just realtor.com. The thing there, though, is we know that those aren't set in stone values, but we're trying to get an approximation of what things are selling for, what supply and demand is, because later in our formal due diligence, then we'll get a true broker's price opinion, a BPO, to substantiate it. But right now, we're just trying to get a basic idea. And at this stage, in this gathering information deal analysis stage, then we also at some point going to want to get copies of the documents.
We are, and I want to say right here is a good dividing area, because you may not be crunching the numbers. So I want to be very clear about this. If you are going to just flip the note, and I think it's good, by the way, for everybody to learn how to crunch the numbers, no matter what. But if you find a deal, there are always people that will crunch numbers for you. We do it for our members. We, funders do, on funding deals. So at the very basic, there's a split here. If you know you're flipping the note and you fill out that worksheet, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes about sending deals on to funders, where they will come back and tell you how much they're willing to pay for it. So someone's going to be able to crunch the numbers for you there. So there is a little bit of a split. But as Tracy said, at some point, we're going to want to see the documents when you're talking about deal analysis, because we're going to want to see how was the note written? What are the terms? Do they match what the seller told you on the phone or submitted via email? Because that happens a lot. They forget about something. Oh, I thought the note was at 8% and it turns out at 2%, or I forgot there was a balloon or whatever it may be. So at some point,
things they forget.
Yeah, so at some point we're going to want to look at the documents. And none of it's a big deal. It can affect the deal pricing, but it's not a big deal to go find out what it is.
So now that you've done some basic deal analysis, you're going to move into the next step, which is pricing. And this is where there will be a difference in how you operate, as Fred mentioned. If you're buying the note, then you're going to determine what price you would pay. You're going to look at your maximum investment to value, your yield, your discount, and that'll end up being expressed as a percentage of the unpaid principal balance. If you're buying that note, then you get to decide that. That's the beauty of the note business, whether you'll do a full or partial, what return you want. If you're going to refer it and flip it and earn a fee, then for pricing, you're going to send it to investor. You want to talk a little bit of how that looks?
Yes, so what it is you're going to actually fill out the worksheet, and it's usually nothing more than faxing it or sending the information to a funder. Email now. And the funder's going to look at it, and they're going to take a look at what you filled out, and they may come back with a couple questions, but they're going to send you back how much they're willing to pay for the note. They may give you a full offer for the note if they're buy the whole thing. If you saw some of the other videos, you can do partials. So they may say, look, we'll buy the whole note for this much, or we'll buy the next 10 years worth of payments for this much. And that's when you really want to know how to make a presentation, and it helps to have somebody, talk you through what that looks like. But they're going to come back with that number. Now, you are going to take that number and subtract something off for yourself. So if I was a funder and say, hey, I'm willing to pay $90,000 for this note, and it probably won't be a round number, but for this exercise, let's just say it is. I'm willing to pay $90,000 for this note. You need to take something off for yourself and present that onto the seller. So if Tracy was the seller and I said, hey, I'm willing to pay you right now watching me $90,000, you might say, okay, I want to make $4,000 for myself. So you take $4,000 off, and now you offer Tracy $86,000. So I offered 90, you take off 4,000 for yourself. That's going to be your fee. And then you offer Tracy 86. Now, again, it's not going to be round numbers. Matter of fact, I'm famous for going down to 23 cents. So you'll always see 23 cents on there or 27 cents on there on one of my offers. I always go down to the penny on that. But that's the way the process is going to look with the funders. And then if they accept, now you're going to go on to the documentation.
Now, this is a good time to think about when you're making that offer. This applies to whether you're going to flip the note or whether you're going to invest in the note, and what are the costs going to be to purchase that note and who's going to pay them. It's easiest to negotiate a transaction with the seller of a note if you can give them a net offer, and you as the investor, or if you are flipping it to an investor, they pay the costs. That is the easiest sale. Sometimes you might want to split some of the costs with the seller, or you may want to find out if there's existing title and you can use that to back off some costs. But let's take just a second to talk about the normal cost. And that's normally going to be some kind of BPO, which is not very much, right? $100 to $150. There's going to be a title report or a title policy. That can vary greatly depending on if there's a title policy in place or not. So that can go from just a simple title report update of $100 to $150 to a full-blown untitled policy, which could be up to 1,000 or more because it's based on the balance of the note. So I'm not trying to get too technical. If you're working with an investor on that, they will let you know whether they pay the cost or not.
And most do. Most are going to pay all the costs.
If you're flipping the note, there are investors out there that say they pay all the costs, and they're giving you what's called a retail quote. If they give you something called a wholesale quote, you got to go, oh wait, who's paying costs? What are they going to be? If you're the investor, it's likely you're going to pay those costs. And so you got to make sure you calculate those in. You're just accounting for them to make sure that you're getting enough discount and enough yield. So that is part of the pricing process, is to just think about those costs. And if you're flipping it and you're new at this, it's better to work with an investor that'll pick up those costs than you or the seller don't have to worry about them.
And by the way, if you're watching this live right now and not catching the replay, you are welcome to ask questions in one of the chat if you're on Facebook or YouTube or something like that. So recapping a little bit and making offers, what we're looking at is presenting the offer. And we talk about filling out the worksheet. Now, whether you're gonna crunch the numbers yourself on the calculator or you're gonna get a funder, you're gonna present an offer and you're trying to create the best possible offer. Now, as I said earlier, there's lots of different ways to present offers, and you could come up with 20 of them, but we're not gonna do that. We're probably only going to give them two options, a full and a partial. Maybe there's a third partial in our back pocket if we're not quite sure which way they want to go. But you don't want to shotgun them with a whole bunch of offers. They just get confused. They say no. And then also make sure, even if the person says no and they're not going to move forward, always follow it up in writing. That's just good practice, because a lot of times people take that letter, they'll put it away, and a month later, 2 months later, 3 months later, they're going to go, you know what, I've changed my mind, and they'll pull it up and go, can you rerun the numbers and find out what it's worth today? It's been a couple months.
And if at all possible, make sure you're always getting someone's email and phone number, because then you can email them, put them on an email list, and continue to follow up for them for no cost. And if they opt in, you could even text message them. So you could use some more modern ways of keeping in touch as well, depending on the sophistication or the age demographic of your seller. But everybody pretty much has cell phones now, right? And email.
Yeah, everybody has email. And we gave our members, we gave them things they could have as giveaways. So if you can have a little special report or something, and then you have their emails, I call it a bribe. Tracy calls it a incentive for someone to give you their email, but you're providing something of value to them, and you don't want to over email them, but you do want to continually kind of check in. And email doesn't cost anything marketing wise. So if you get somebody from say you had a direct mail campaign and that cost you $1 for the letter and 50 cents for the postcard, and they eventually sign up for your email list, well, guess what? It's costing you next to nothing to continue to hold that conversation or keep that rapport going, because now you've switched them over to email, and that's very, very powerful and very cost effective.
The other thing we do, if people don't say yes right now, is we say that it's great to get, values of notes change depending on interest rate and property values. So it's really good to get your note analyzed for its fair market value at least once a year. And so, we'll just reach back out to you in 6 months to a year. We'll reach back out to you in 6 months to let you know what the fair market value is. Because right now interest rates are low, and so notes really are at a premium. People are getting really good pricing on notes because interest rates are low, so costs of funds are low, real estate values are up. It really truly is a good time to sell a note because of those factors. So it's good to let those people know that as well, or if their circumstances change, that you're always there. You always are being of service and you're helping them. It's never an adversarial relationship. So let's say they say yes, woohoo, that's a good thing. So now what do we do? Now we're going to talk about working with funders. And if you're the funder, then you'll go through this process on your own if you're flipping it. So this is working with investors or working with funders. Now you might be thinking, oh, I don't have funders, I don't have the money, what am I going to do? Well, we want to let you know that they are very readily available. So we've got a note buyers directory that we put available on our website. So that note buyers directory has been updated for 2021, and we update it every year. And there are lots of people that will buy those notes and pay a fee for them. And even if you're buying it for yourself, sometimes you like to get a second opinion what the note might be worth. You want to see what the liquidity is, and you might even send it to them to get a pricing.
Yeah, and if you go to noteinvestor.com and just look in the resource library in the bookstore, you can see the funder directory.
I think we have a picture of what it looks like, just so everybody visually can see
and
that.
There it is. And so, and we update that every year. So there's not only funders in there, but there's also industry providers, and there's some other other things in there as well.
Exactly. So we also do a best of notes every year, and so people vote who their favorite BPO company is, which is broker's price opinion, what their favorite title company is, who their favorite processing company is, their favorite self-directed IRA, their favorite business note buyer, because you can buy notes that are secured by real estate, but there are also companies that will buy notes that are just secured by business assets. And there's even more seller financing on business only deals than there are real estate deals. So this does not just apply to real estate.
Mm-hmm. Charles had a question here. What's the timing of your offer? How soon? I'm going to answer that two ways, Charles, because I'm not sure if you're asking how soon after they create the note or how soon after I fill out the worksheet. So let me answer that both ways. Is the second one being how soon after I collect the information on the worksheet? Typically the next day. Worst case 2 days, but I want to get back to them as soon as possible. Sometimes it's a matter of hours. If I talk to them in the morning and if I'm going to buy the note, then I crunch the numbers. I don't do it immediately on the phone with them. I actually take a pause. I gather the information. I get off the phone with them. I take a look at the numbers, rerun my numbers, talk to Tracy. We, just jointly decide if it's something we're going to purchase. Make sure we didn't miss anything. Maybe do a little bit of research, then go back and make a presentation. If I'm flipping the note onto a funder, and by the way, we'll still flip notes. If there's notes that we don't like, or they're too big, or they're just not a property we really enjoy, or a state we don't like, we'll flip out a note. I mean, if I've got the lead, I might as well make some money off of it. So we'll fill that out, send it on to a funder. So maybe the funder gets back to me late afternoon. Maybe that evening I subtract my fee. Maybe that evening I go ahead and I submit an offer to the seller, or maybe the next day I submit it, but probably not much longer than about 24 hours. If you're talking about how soon after the note is created, you want to talk about that?
So there are companies that will buy a seller finance note as soon as one payment has been made and the deed of trust or mortgage have been recorded. So there's something called a wet funding or a dry funding. So the ink does need to have been dried, the deed of trust or mortgage recorded, and one payment collected. That payment could be collected at closing as quickly as that. There are institutional investors. One of them that was nominated and won best of, and there's a great interview we did with them, is First National Acceptance Company. And they will pay up to 97% of the unpaid principal balance on certain A quality notes. They will also buy lots that are not 97 cents on the dollar. They will pay that, though, if it meets their criteria, with just one payment made. The more payments that are made on a note, the more seasoning that it has, the more valuable that note is. We like to see notes that have more seasoning, but if the other qualities are good, the equity and the credit and the property type, it's possible with just one payment made. That's a great question.
I think one point to make right now that is really, really important is that you have to understand that we are not lenders. We don't loan money. So part of the distancing on that is that the note has to be done, created, and established. A lot of times a payment needs to be made, or more, some people are even require even more payments. And then we will purchase an existing note. We do not lend money. We're not simultaneously funding and lending the transaction. Our monies are not being used to buy a property or anything like that. So that's an important distinction that sometimes people make a mistake of, but we're not lenders. That's not what we're doing. There are lending strategies that are different from this, but this is not what we're talking about.
If you're lending money to owner-occupied buyers, there's a whole lot of regulation out there. So we're looking at buying an existing seller finance note on the secondary market. So a big distinction. Now, when you are working with an investor or you are the investor yourself, this is when the due diligence comes in. You are truly getting copies of all the documents, ordering a title, ordering BPO, checking to taxes and insurance, and getting a payment history, and knowing whether they're paying a service or paying the seller, and verifying that, and knowing the property's insured. This is a normal checklist, a normal transaction checklist that we make available for free on our website, that you go through the process of verifying those things. Now, that's if you're buying the note. If you're flipping the note, that investor is going to do that process. They may ask you to help gather some of those items, but they will want to do the check of the due diligence items, usually themselves. Now, you've got through due diligence and you're ready to go to funding. That's our best day ever, right? Closing.
Yep.
And at closing, then if you're sending it to a funder, they'll prepare that package. They're going to prepare a purchase agreement. They're going to prepare an assignment, a note endorsement, some what are called hello and goodbye letters to let the buyer know where to make their payment. They can do that through title company, wire the funds in there. Seller sends their documents in there, including that original note. That's very important to track down before closing. And they will fund into escrow, and the title company or escrow company will disperse the money to the seller, and that funding source will pay your fee as well. If you are buying the note yourself, then that fee you're not having to pay, or maybe you're paying a fee because somebody referred it to you, you will have to fund those funds in there. If you're working with a self-directed IRA, they'll fund those funds in there with your direction. So that's very exciting. So then those documents gets recorded and servicing gets transferred over. That is typically the day in the life of a note buyer.
That's it. Pretty exciting, isn't it? It's kind of sexy.
I think the most exciting part is, when we help people get the money they need and we get to make a profit. And whether that's going to be flipping it, immediate income, or now we're collecting payments and we're getting that interest income. One thing we don't always talk about a lot as note investors, it's very important. If you buy that note and you are getting a return of a payment every month, you've got to think about how you're going to reinvest that money.
Yeah, I think another issue I want to bring up here that I think is important is that this whole day in the life thing where we talk about, marketing and gathering information, understand that you can do this from anywhere. We have. So this last year, we went on the road for 3.5 months, 4 months, and just out of a trailer.
Camper trailer.
Yeah, and found Wi-Fi where we could and still ran our business. We were in Guatemala for 8 months and still ran our business. We were in Italy for a long time and still ran our business and came back. So understand that for us, one of the things that attracted us to this industry is that it's the flexibility. We don't work for anybody else. We don't have to commute. I'm not worried about traffic is. I'm not worried about getting in at 9 o'clock and someone telling me I'm in a meeting. I golf typically on Wednesdays. It's not a big secret. I go out and I typically take off Wednesdays in the morning and I go golfing. Or if a friend calls me up and says, hey, you want to go golf on Thursday or you want to go do something else? We have that flexibility. And that's part of what I love about this industry. In addition to the creativeness, in addition to doing all the other stuff, the ability that we can just kind of make our own schedule.
And if you or somebody wants to invest in notes, it gives you an alternative to the stock market. It is a way to have assets backed by real estate that don't require you to have tenants. So you get to have owners in the property that pay the maintenance, the taxes, and the insurance, and you get to collect the payment, have the interest income. If you are somebody who fixes and flips properties, the real estate themselves, it gives you another avenue because it takes a lot of time and energy to find a wholesale deal, fix it up, flip it. It's not as easy as they make it look like on HGTV. And I love those shows as much as anybody. But yeah, I do. But if you are buying a note secured by that real estate, then you are able to do it with much less time and energy invested. And so you're the bank, right? The bank is working to get the interest income. Yeah. They're making it off their arbitrage spread. So whether you're an investor or you're doing it for immediate income, this business can be a really great opportunity for you. Now you have to run it like a business. It truly is a business. And what amount of time you want to invest in it as well is up to you, but you will see those results in return.
Yep. Well, thank you for joining us. Appreciate you hanging out with us. The noteinvestor.com/101. If you've missed any of the previous episodes, this was just us putting together a mini series on, basics of note investing. We hope you're finding them helpful. We might actually do a couple more episodes coming up here. But if you go there and you like, share, hit the bell, and all those things, you'll be notified when we do another one of these videos. If there's any subjects you want us to talk about, send us an email. You can go to noteinvestor.com and you can see our contact information and stuff there as well. But thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, and happy note investing.
Bye, everybody.